Hello everybody, welcome back to the WTF1 podcast, and today it is a massive welcome back because we are talking about real life Formula One. As much as virtual has been amazing, it's finally about the real life Formula One world because we have the Austrian Grand Prix Part 1 this weekend. I'm Matt Gallagher, of course, and joining me in this podcast, as always, would never be the same without it. Him, you're an it under him. It's Tom Bellingham.
Hello, F1 is back. I am buzzing. It's been, again, we're having another preview podcast, part 2.
Yeah, so this is our second part for our preview. Hopefully it's the last preview podcast we have to do for the 2020 season. God forbid if we have to do a third. But today, obviously, we're going to be discussing all about the Austrian Grand Prix Part 1, what's going to happen, your questions. But first, we had 3 word previews from some of you on Instagram. At Harvey.316, I am excited. At RC_Dianesh, about effing time. And at Matty Johnson 17, I don't know how to pronounce this one. It's actually in 3 parts, but it's Sagruftetib Jijik. Essentially
nice.
Gobbledygook.
I like it. I liked that one.
I actually tried. Yeah, I tried to pronounce it. So Matty Johnson, I hope I did you proud. And of course, your name is Matty as well. So
I was a big fan of that word review. It just cannot handle.
Did it strike a chord?
Yeah, cannot handle the excitement of F1 back. Just mashing the keyboard. I was a big fan.
Big fan, and it was a big load of gobbledygook. It's been 217 days, which is almost double the amount we thought it was going to be. It's actually just over double, isn't it? What we thought it would be when we finished in Abu Dhabi last year. Can you believe it is? Well, it'll be July when this goes out, and we haven't had an F1 race yet. It's
mad,
mind-boggling.
It's unbelievable. We could never have imagined it at the end of Abu Dhabi to think that. Because we're so used to really short off seasons now, because we've obviously grown up watching Formula One in the kind of 90s and 2000s, and maybe there was like 15, 16, but we're used to 21 races, and the season finale is getting later and later, and the kind of season opener is getting earlier and earlier. So not much of an off season, but yeah, it's the 3rd longest in history.
Well, that's what Aces Savannah was asking. Is this the latest in the year that F1 season has started? You said it's the 3rd latest.
Yeah, so in terms of actual date, we've never started a F1 season in July. In the 50s, when they used to have seasons where there were only kind of like 8 races and they were very spaced out, we'd race in kind of middle of May time. So this is, in terms of actual days, though, it's the 3rd longest in history.
What were the other 2? Do you know?
50 to 51 and 60 to 61. Although when we put that graphic up on Insta, someone made a very good point that the longest off season was actually pre-1950 and 8 billion years, which did make me chuckle. It feels like this off season's been 8 billion years, to be honest.
It does. We're never, ever going to think that an off-season is long compared to this, are we? 3 months, what am I going to do with the time? It'll fly by. But this has been ridiculous, obviously, with the whole world situation. It's been out of everybody's hands. But, I'm looking forward to a lot of F1 racing. It's going to be very weird to have Austria twice, something we've never experienced before. Have we ever had it before, Tommy? I'm going to put you on the spot again with that one.
Ooh.
Have we ever raced at the same track twice in a season?
Oh, God, you have put me on the spot there. I don't actually know.
Just
I don't believe there's ever been a double header. I think there is probably an event in history where there has been 2 races where a circuit may have had to jump in. I know there was like 2 races in Britain where, you have the whole thing where they race and they did it as like the British Grand Prix and the European Grand Prix and things like that. But this is a very odd one that they're going to be a week apart, which is very strange, which we'll go into later.
Yeah, look, I was happy. I think I tweeted a few months ago, I was happy to have France 21 times if necessary. So the fact that we're going to Austria twice is not the worst thing in the world. We had a great race last year, although it tears my heart slightly apart with how that ended. But we had a great race there all the same. Obviously, it was a really hot day then, wasn't it? Whereas it looks like in the forecast, it could even be raining this weekend. So that could spice it up even more. I think I might actually explode if we have F1 back after 7 months or whatever it is, and also we have rain and we have like a crazy race like Germany or something. That would be mad, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I saw this is going to be mad, but I saw a stat today. I don't know the exact on this day, but someone said it's been a year ago since Germany. So that really kind of shows how late on we are in the season to have no F1. Crazy.
That's mad. Let's move on to some news. We've had a little bit of news since our last podcast that we did, one of which is the new Mercedes livery, and Williams as well, of course. Obviously, the Mercedes one was a more powerful and stronger message, whereas the Williams was just their new livery, wasn't it? So two kind of very different car launch liveries. But the Mercedes one, I guess, was a really interesting one to see as a movement from the team. Obviously, I imagine, don't know the ins and outs, but you would speculate that Lewis Hamilton had a lot to do with that, to really kind of force the message that's been going through, Black Lives Matter and that amazing movement for the last few months, and obviously long continuing into the future as well. I am interested to think, to see what they'll also do apart from that, because obviously you have the livery, which is a great thing to see. You've got Lewis Hamilton setting up a new foundation, wasn't it, as well?
Yeah, and I believe Mercedes have done something similar as well. So it isn't just the livery that they've done. They do have actually like committed to doing things rather than just making a statement. But it is obviously a very powerful statement for someone like Mercedes to do it. You're right that I believe that the talk came about from them chatting to Lewis Hamilton about his feeling towards things. And for Mercedes to do something is a pretty big deal, because of course they've been silver for generations and that is their racing color. So not saying it's less impactful if someone else does it, but other than Ferrari, it's one of those things where like that's their racing color. So you kind of feel, well, Mercedes will never not be silver. So this is a really kind of bold thing to do, and it looks damn awesome as well, in my opinion.
It looks amazing. The message is also amazing. I'm not going to get into trouble for saying this, but I found it ridiculous, the amount of social media hate towards Hamilton, towards Mercedes for saying that they're hypocrites, or the fact that they look back down their history. And I think I read a tweet from F1 Dorney who she was saying about, if you look back at any company's history long enough, you'll find something to have a go at them about. Like Coca-Cola used to have cocaine in it and things like that, exactly. But you don't see people saying stuff about that now. So I think that's a very select group of individuals that's saying those ridiculous things. But
Nigel Farage,
I'm sure. Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Don't even get me started with him starting me on Twitter the other week. But yeah, I'm personally, and I'm sure you're the same. I don't want to speak for you, Tommy, but we're fully behind that amazing message that Hamilton's been pushing, and everyone within the sport that's now kind of coming out and saying things. So
absolutely, and and of course the F1's pledge as well. So hopefully
we race as one. Is it race?
We race as one. Yeah. So important messages, which hopefully, like you say, let's hope it's not just a flash in the pan, because it's important for it to happen all the time, not just like a little phase while there's no F1 racing, but it's definitely going in the right direction. So let's hope that happens. And yeah, absolutely, it's great that what Mercedes have done, and I can't believe people would complain about it. So, but there you go.
People complain about everything at the moment, don't they, on social media? But let's move on. Let's keep it positive. So the Mercedes livery as an actual whole looks sexy. I have to say, I really like it. Yeah. I think before their first car launch, obviously there was lots of talk about, will the Mercedes change? And then it hardly changed. And people were talking about the bit of red they didn't particularly like. And, there was tiny little minuscule things, but now it's completely changed. And, that will ensure that the message stays for at least a season and into the future when people look back on it and go, why did they have that livery? And I personally love it. Yeah. And the Williams one, I think it's better than last year personally.
Not difficult.
But it's still not really, like blowing me away.
It's good. I like it. It's like everyone's just saying like how clean and fresh it looks, which
Colgate.
Yeah, but yeah, it's decent. It's funny. I saw a crazy stat that this will be the first F1 car Lewis Hamilton has ever driven that's not silver.
That is a very good point.
It's crazy, isn't it?
McLaren and Mercedes, yeah. Mad. So let's see how he does. Hannah SFH. People's names, honestly, it's not like a Hannah.
You've missed this, haven't you?
Hannah SFH. Yes, I've really missed trying to pronounce people's names. Will the Mercedes new liveries jinx their win, just like that? They're just like they are try something different in Germany. That's not the greatest of English, but just like they tried in Germany, I imagine that's what it's trying to say. And well, I mean, that's speculation. I don't believe in that sort of stuff where it's written in the stars and all that good stuff. But I don't think it will distract them, because Germany was a very unique case, and the fact that they were distracted, it was a whole show that they were putting on. They'd pretty much wrapped up the title in Germany, which is quite difficult, and hard to accept as an F1 fan, but they had. And, they could afford to put on such an amazing show. Obviously, they looked bad afterwards, but, it's a livery and that's it. So for the season, I don't see it affecting them at all, really.
No, exactly. There'll be a bit of kind of extra, maybe media chat. And the thing is, like, Hamilton's shown that he is a really good driver when it comes to distractions. He's won so many world titles. When people complain, certain news outlets love to kind of prod him at everything he does and say, "Oh, why is he in a recording studio doing music? He should be focusing on the title," and he's still winning the world titles. So, and I've seen the same thing where people.
Was it Singapore? I feel like Singapore was one where he had just flown in from doing something or other, and then he won.
And then he won, and then set like one of the greatest pole laps of all time. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. But yeah, he's going to be one of those that doesn't get fazed by it, and I'm sure it's not going to affect them. But the whole thing with Germany, like you say, I'm not one for believing that they jinxed anything or it was cursed. It was just one of those crazy races. But if the weather forecast in Austria is anything to go by, we might have something of the same, because it does say that heavy thunderstorms are expected at the weekend, although I do believe that's changed to Friday. Yeah. So you never know, but you never know, it could happen.
Fingers crossed.
Imagine,
I don't mind. As long as the race goes ahead. I don't want too much rain that the race gets cancelled.
Can you imagine?
Oh my God. I think everyone would just explode. At iNico10010 says, will this long pause from racing advantage... What? Oh, from racing?
Yeah.
No comma. Advantage F1 teams or disadvantage them? I personally, from that question, I think that the brains never stop. So I feel like the F1 teams at the top will still have more time to think about things, especially with how it ended with F1 testing. Then obviously the shutdown, but that doesn't mean that people don't stop working, don't stop making designs and, sitting at home, sketching this, that, and the other. And I feel like, if anything, I think it might advantage Ferrari with how slow they looked, and it gave them enough time to at least research why. But that's my thinking.
Yeah, I guess they're all in the same boat, aren't they? But in terms of Ferrari, I did actually... I had the same thing in my notes, that Ferrari would be glad for a longer break, because it seemed like they were pretty woeful, and there was even talk that they might even be slower than Racing Point, which would be rather insane, which we'll go into in a bit. Yeah. But I did read that they aren't bringing any updates to Austria, so... maybe things aren't going as well. But in terms of teams that were probably fuming, that would be Racing Point, because it sounded like they had an absolute banger of a car, according to kind of media hype and paddock hype and all that kind of stuff. And they looked like they were going to go into Australia, maybe even challenging for a podium, or at least be best of the rest. So they're probably a little annoyed. It'd be interesting to see how they do. But they could... Yeah,
it doesn't take away from their pace, though, does it?
No, they're not going to just be slow.
The car is still there, and it'd be interesting to see if we see 8 teams full of pink Mercedes copies and aerodynamics very similar to last year's Mercedes. But yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see where Racing Point stack up. There was a lot of hype, but as we know with testing, there's always hype, and then whoever wins, or wins testing, but it's fastest in testing, isn't usually the fastest. So. Yeah. But at the same time, that's not usually the case with midfield teams, though, is it? We don't usually see a Renault or a McLaren or whatever topping the times. It's not as easy as that. So
I think that's one of the things I'm most excited for, is seeing just how good this Racing Point is. I know it's controversial, but it's going to be exciting.
Well, before we dive into any more of that, at Mattia Nuara says, are Racing Point contenders or pretenders? I think they're neither. I think they I don't think they'll be contending. I don't think they're pretending to have pace. I think they fit just quite nicely from what we saw in F1 testing behind Red Bull and Mercedes, but ahead of Ferrari was what it looked like, at least. So they're bridging that gap from the midfield to the front runners from what we can see, or what we did see, which is what we so got used to seeing back in like 2012 when, you know, we had lots of different cars on the podium and things. So yeah, I think for me, that's what I'd like to see it happening in this year.
Personally, I don't buy the fact that there'll be this will probably be one of those top 10 things, moments before disaster. But I personally don't buy the fact that Racing Point are going to be faster than Ferrari. I can't. For me, just the way the last few years have gone, I cannot see anyone breaking into that top 3. I mean, I'd happily be proven wrong. No disrespect to Ferrari, but just because I love an underdog. It would be amazing to see Racing Point challenging for podiums just for a story, but I personally cannot see them beating Ferrari. I can see them being better than the rest and beating McLaren, but I think it's a stretch to think that they'd be in the top 3. Maybe it's difficult.
There's only one way to find out, and it happens on Sunday.
Or even Friday. We might find out a little more on Friday.
Wow, not if it's raining and then it's dry in the race. Could provide some spicy times. But how drivers will approach things, another thing to kind of cast our minds upon. At Michael Grimwoo5 says, will the drivers be more aggressive with a shorter season, meaning each point means more? I think, I don't think aggression, just purely from the fact that if they're too aggressive and then they crash into somebody, that's 0 points, and points do mean more, because this is the first time I can imagine in history where a team and their drivers are going into a season not knowing how long the season is going to be. So for them, they don't know that where the halfway point is. They don't know where the end point is. It must be such a weird thing to go into. So that's why I know that it's very cliche what they used to say in media interviews across the years, like, oh, take each weekend as it comes, but literally that's what they have to do. So each time it's going to have to feel like a championship to them.
It's insane, isn't it, that we did a podcast, God knows when it was now, 2-3 weeks ago, about people saying that the new calendar was favoring Red Bull and all that stuff, which personally we came to the conclusion that we don't think it does. But it is going to be fascinating, and the point we made in that was never, like you say, never have we gone into a season where, say 7 races are gone. I mean, let's be honest, they're going to announce the races a lot sooner than that. But say even the first 3 races, and they theoretically speaking, I doubt this would happen, but theoretically speaking, they go, we can't do any more races because of the COVID situation, or if that evolves or whatever. They've done 3 races. That's almost half the season done, and the drivers may have been planning for 10 races and not really going hard or making moves. And then there's only a handful of races where they need to catch up that points difference. So the championship could, if people are close to Mercedes, which we really hope they are, it could be an insane championship where no one knows when the season's going to end. It's like a lottery when, like, how many points people are going to need to be able to catch up.
Yeah, I don't doubt that every weekend is usually a big push from the drivers, big push from the teams. But yeah, I think mentally it's going to be an interesting one, just purely from the fact, as you say, we don't know when the end is. We don't know. I'd hope to think that when we get to the final of scheduled races, we then know what's happening after that. But yeah, as you say, it's and as F1 have loved to say over the last few months, it's a fluid situation. They don't know what's going to happen. Everything's changing by the minute. But I don't think people will be more aggressive. I think that it will just mean a lot more during the races, and I think that you might see drivers even more annoyed in the post-race stuff if it hasn't gone their way, or if the car's rubbish, or even if qualifying goes badly. So moving on to the next question, at Palin Lover says, with no guarantee of when the season will end, do you think that adds more pressure to the drivers, and who do you think will relish the challenge? I think, well, we did discuss Red Bull not necessarily being favoured over the current set of tracks, but I think with the fact it is Austria, Hungary, there is definitely a chance for Verstappen, as we've already mentioned, to potentially win 3 races, have an enormous championship advantage, and then that's the situation I think Verstappen would relish in, is leading a championship and absolutely giving it elbows to fight for every single point, tooth and nail. So for me, I think someone like Verstappen definitely. I think it's a great chance for Albon to get his first podium in the first few races. It will add more pressure for sure, and especially with those teams that are potentially struggling a bit more, maybe Haas, because they were struggling financially before, I think. McLaren have been struggling, but they've said they'd never leave F1. But these teams that need the points from the Constructors' Championship for the money, if they're not getting the results, I'm sure they'll pile on the pressure to the drivers.
Yeah, we said in the last one about Mercedes not, like the last couple of seasons, Mercedes have kind of been ahead from the start and kind of walked it really. This, like you say, I don't think the calendar favours Red Bull, because after the first 3 races, then it becomes more Mercedes territory. But like you say, if Verstappen does win the first 3 races, then there'll be huge pressure on Mercedes to try and turn it around, and it would be really interesting to see them behind. One of the things actually with this whole situation about a shorter championship, I was thinking this the other day, that the effects of a mechanical failure could be like absolutely devastating on a championship. And if you go back to 2016 and Hamilton in Malaysia, where it looked like he was going to win the title that year after kind of all the failures he'd had, and he pulled it back for Rosberg and then had that mechanical failure. If Mercedes are completely overpowered and incredible and finishing 1-2 in every race, even if Bottas is finishing second in all those races, Hamilton has 1 failure, Bottas wins, and a 25-point swing in Bottas's favour, and there's only 10 races. It's massive. That could be pretty dramatic.
It is huge. I imagine we'll probably get more than 10 races if the COVID
so.
situation doesn't get out of hand. But
we never know.
It looks like it could again. Yeah. We don't know. It's very much a difficult situation to predict. But as you say, yeah, it could be 10 races. It could be 15. But either way, it's still not going to be 22. I think that's pretty much 100% guaranteed. Yeah. So there is more pressure on the teams. It's a really good point, because if they have a double DNF, that's Constructors' Championship out the window, it almost feels like, I imagine, after a race like that. So or a championship where it's only 10 races. So yeah, you make a very good point. So it'll be interesting to see if they push the car as much as they would have in a full season. When you see Verstappen saying he wants to go for fastest lap, will they even risk going for fastest lap these days when they've got so much on the line, say if they're in P5 and 6 or whatever? I don't know, but that's just speculation. But at the same time, it will be very interesting to see how it all pans out, because this is going to be a season we'll hopefully never have again, but it'll be one that we look back on in the history books and go, wow, that really did happen, didn't it?
It's going to be really bizarre looking back on the season generally, just in terms of the pictures will be strange, because like you say, you've got people in different liveries, you've got people wearing masks, you'll have no crowd. It's going to be truly bizarre, but obviously the devastating effects of COVID aside, in terms of the actual racing and the spectacle, it's one of those seasons that's just a complete mix, and it's going to be so different to any other season. It's going to be really, really interesting from a kind of pure racing perspective.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think any of us really thought we'd lived through a global pandemic, did we? It's just been the most outrageous few months, but hopefully everybody watching, listening, you guys, you're staying safe, and yeah, it's been a very weird time, and hopefully we'll be able to get back to normal at some point.
Hopefully. Yeah.
Right, let's move on. Double headers at Spoopy Roll. Hello, Spoopy. How different do you think the races on the same tracks will be? Or will they be carbon copies of the previous race the week before? Now, for this one, it's... in my heart, I'm saying, please, we'll have 2 completely different races. But it just can't be the same. Like the pace will be pretty much the same, unless the track conditions are so widely different. Because, if it's 31 degrees and the tyres are absolutely, blistering on the Mercedes, and that's the temperatures we know they don't work at very well, and then the next week it's 20 degrees, that could be a completely different set of form for all the teams. But if it's similar conditions, it's going to be a carbon copy, I think, of at least qualifying. The race can go so much different. Lap 1 can go so much more different. We can have safety cars, things to mess up the strategy, but it's almost like a practice run for the second race where we'll know the strategy, and it'll be interesting for me to see if teams go for different strategies, different tyre strategies, learn from the first race and try something different in the second. It's certainly going to be hopefully an interesting one, and I'd hope it's not just going to be a copy and paste for the next week.
I think that's probably the biggest concern for people while we're all buzzing about Formula One being back. I think it's fair that people are disappointed that maybe they didn't play with the second race a little more, do something like a reverse grid or something a little bit different. We won't go into that because you've mentioned it so many times in every podcast we've done in lockdown. But it is one of those weird situations. But and I'm the same as you. I very much want to be like, no race is the same. And it only takes a bad qualifying. You've seen problems in qualifying for even Mercedes. So it only takes a failure. Say Mercedes walk the first race with a 1-2. Hamilton could have a failure in qualifying in the next race, and then it's completely different, and he has to come through the field. And even if he wins again, it's still a different dynamic. Someone can have their wing taken off in the first corner. Track temperature's different. People can do a bad qualifying lap. There might be rain. Even if there's rain on the Friday, it kind of hampers their setup because they're planning how they're going to use the tyres in the temperatures that they're expecting on Sunday. And then, there's so many variables that it's not going to be exactly the same. What I will say is I just hope it's different enough.
Yeah, and I think, going back to my original point, it all depends on the track conditions, because if Ferrari on the first qualifying are a second off and it's similar track conditions for the second one, it's not going to be much different. You know, they can't develop a part and send it out. That they might be able to, because, you know, you hear about different specs of wing, different sort of stuff they bring to certain races. They might do a thing where they realise that their setup is completely wrong in the first one and they get something flown out from their factory for the second race. But that's about as extreme as it'll get, as if that part is already prepared. So for me, I don't see the form sheet changing hardly at all unless we have a complete widespread change of conditions and crashes and all that good stuff. But I think the unknown is definitely still there. Lap 1 is still a complete unknown. So for me, definitely stay tuned. The fact that it's the first and second race benefits, I think, for viewers, because we won't be used to Formula One being back again when we have Austria again. So I don't think there'll be many complaints.
Yeah, it's hard to complain. It really is hard to complain that even if the second race is dull, we'll just be happy that Formula One is back. It's been a long time.
At Nitro084 says, what would the teams be doing on the second weekend practice sessions when at the same track as they would have already done 3 practice sessions on the first weekend? I think for this one, there's never enough amount of testing. So they'll still be trialing all sorts of different stuff, in my head anyway, because you have FP1, you have FP2 and FP3. They have their sort of race runs, qualifying runs, testing out different setups for both. They will take those learnings from the first race and then trial it in FP1, FP2, FP3 of part 2. That's how I see it anyway, because they'll know in their heads what they did wrong in the first race and they'll look to adjust that in the second.
It will be different for sure, but we all know what I think of practice. This is
scrap it.
This is their chance that would have been great to ditch it. The one thing I think is very strange actually for Austria is for Silverstone, the second race, they are actually bringing different tyre compounds to the first race. So
okay.
Don't quote me on this, but for example, because I can't remember the exact C1 or whatever it was, but for example, the first race at Silverstone is C2, C3, C4, I think, and then the next race they're doing C3, C4, C5, so there'll be a different tyre.
Oh, okay. They're not
but
doing
they're
that for
not
Austria?
doing that for Austria, which I think is a really strange decision.
That's very odd. That's not even something I thought.
No, and it's such an easy way to make it slightly different without it being too artificial.
Yeah.
Very, very odd that they've not done that. I've not read any reason why they haven't done that in Austria, but when I saw it for Silverstone...
Do you reckon it's a conservative approach or something? Maybe they know that these 3 compounds will work. They don't want to introduce something that might spice it up, but also they don't know how well they'll work, I guess. Because that's the reason there's different compounds, right? Because they can then choose between them for the tracks. So maybe they feel like Austria is only 3 compounds safely. I don't know. I'm literally just thinking out loud.
It's a really weird one. As soon as I saw the Silverstone thing, I was like, that's a really good idea. Why? Wait, they're not doing that for Austria? Why? And it just seems to me like a perfectly logical way just to...
Because what ones are they using for Austria?
Oh, I don't know. You carry on chatting and I can always look.
Okay, you can look it up. Right, we'll go into predictions whilst you look it up. So, at Ernst Jan 1987, what do you think will be the biggest surprise this season? I don't know. I don't know anymore. I think the biggest surprise will still probably seeing Racing Point on the podium at some point if their pace matches up to, well, from first F1 testing, if that matches up to what we see this season. I think that'll be a big surprise. I think, I don't know. I think we'll see a resurgent Vettel as well. I think we will see someone that will really take it to Charles Leclerc this year. That's what I would like to see anyway. What do you get?
He's got nothing. That's an interesting point actually. Vettel's got nothing to lose now because he doesn't need to keep Ferrari happy. They're not gonna, unless he does anything horrendous, fire him mid-season. Yeah. So he doesn't really need to keep Ferrari happy, and he's probably the kind of driver that would just say, well, screw it, this is my last season, I'm going to take it to Charles. And I think it would be amazing to see that. I've got the tyre compounds, by the way. So
go on,
C2, C3, and C4 for Austria. Second race, obviously, C2, C3, C4. And then Silverstone, they're doing C1, C2, C3 for the first race, and C2, C3, C4 for the second race.
Okay, so scrap the first thing you said. That's the real one.
So delete your comment now if you already complained.
Yeah, delete. Yeah. We've already corrected it, guys. I can hear you typing as we said that. But okay, good stuff. So that is interesting. Yeah, C2, C3, C4. That's right in the middle as well. So who knows? But they definitely should have mixed it up. That's 100% agreed. So predictions. I am predicting that a Racing Point will qualify in the top 5. Going for quite a safe one there, I think. With
I don't know, that's still
was potentially
pretty bold.
Yeah, I think. Well, for you don't believe Racing Point will stack up to being faster than Ferrari. I think potentially with Austria looming with some rain, we could see a Racing Point in the top 5, and then Albon first podium. Because as much as Red Bull, I don't think will be home and dry in terms of pace. I think they may not, because they weren't even they weren't quicker last time they won, were they? The Mercedes just conked out, or at least
Austria. You're about.
I'm trying to remember. No, sorry, the year before.
Year before
I'm just trying to think when Verstappen
was the one where I think Mercedes were walking it and they messed up. There was a mid-race safety car. They messed up the tyre strategy and then they overheated because they were stuck behind other cars, I think.
I remember seeing a Verstappen interview not that long ago with him saying, I don't know why everybody's saying that it's our favourite track because we haven't been fastest there for the last however many years. We've just ended up winning it.
That's so true because this is a now throwback for you and any kind of OG WTF1 fans. But I remember when we did a podcast pre-Austria, and I think Ali predicted that Red Bull were going to win Red Bull Ring, and we were like ridiculing him, going, Red Bull never do well at Red Bull Ring. What are you talking about? And then now it just seems like this foregone conclusion that Red Bull are going to win just because Verstappen's won it the last 2 years. And
when you don't actually look at the factors that were part of both of those races.
They didn't. And even Verstappen in last year, he didn't win from pole. He dropped back and just had a better tyre advantage at the end. So they didn't just run away with it.
Should be interesting though. Red Bull have never been off the pace around Austria, so it should be very interesting to see where they stack up. Tommy, your two?
Commentators will call AlphaTauri Toro at some point.
Shock. I mean, that's 1 point. Well done.
Just wanted to get a point in early.
You're going for a safe one. I see how it is.
Bottas wins. There you go.
Very spicy. Okay, I like that. Yeah, that will spark Bottas porridge 3.7 tea coffee drinking man, wouldn't it?
3.7.
And fans at HasCraig16 points for Russell. Jesus.
Now that's
You'd
bold.
have to have rain for that, I think.
That's bold. That is bold. That is
very bold. Straight out the bats. Out the bats.
They know this race is not on F1 2019, right? They're not playing the F1 game.
This is a virtual race. And at Mr. Random Guy 15, Verstappen will retire in a collision with Leclerc after getting a puncture trying to do the same move he did to him last year. Wow, that's a lot of factors. I'm not accepting a point for that unless every single term and condition is matched for Mr. Random Guy.
This one, I read it and put it in
but he will get 3 points if he gets it right. Sorry,
I read this one and was like, wow, that is really specific. And then it just triggered a memory of, I think this was the race last year where you said Verstappen would do a dive bomb at Bottas for P2, and it was really specific, and then it happened actually in the race.
Yeah,
that was the best prediction ever.
I couldn't believe that.
Yeah,
that was ridiculous, wasn't it?
That was great.
Right, that is it. We have now previewed a real-life Formula One race, the Austrian Grand Prix. I am buzzing, can you tell? Tommy, of course, you are a very excited man yourself.
I am indeed. This one's going to happen this time, right?
Oh, God, don't say that. Why would you? If you jinx this and it doesn't go ahead because of rain or something, I swear to God, this is it. We're having it out.
If it doesn't happen, everyone just comments on the next video going, Tommy's fault.
Exactly. There you go. At least, if not pitchforks outside your house. 1 meter social distancing at all times. Thank you. Right, that is it, guys. I cannot wait to bring you internet's best reactions next week. It is finally back, and then we'll have another podcast to talk about all the ongoings of the first Austrian Grand Prix. I may have forgotten how to present, so bear in mind that when you watch IBR for the first time in 7 months. And should be good. Race rundown will be interesting as well, won't it? But
bit rusty.
Anything else to add, Tommy?
When you said 7 months, I can't get over that it's been that long. We have waited so long for this. I hope it's
over
worth
7
it.
months.
It will be worth it.
It will be worth it. It's Formula One cars on a track.
I'm even going to watch practice and won't complain about it.
Yeah, so am I. I hardly watch practice, so there you go. Here we go then, guys. Austrian Grand Prix coming your way this weekend. Cannot wait. Thank you for watching / listening. Make sure you rate us 5 stars on whatever the hell you're watching. Wait, if you're watching, you can't give us 5 stars. You have to give us a thumbs up. So give us a thumbs up. 5 thumbs up. And give us 5 stars if you're listening on an audio platform. And that is it. Leave a review. We read all of them. And if you want to get involved next time, use the hashtag WTF1 podcast for any suggestions. And make sure you reply to any of our tweets that ask you for stuff because you might be featured. That is it. Isn't it, Tommy?
It is indeed. Bring it on.
Thank you so much for watching / listening. And we'll see you soon. F1's back. Tommy, I'm looking at you.
This week.
F1's back. If it gets cancelled, I'll kill you.
Lovely.